Alright, so after game one between the Suns and the Clippers, I think it is official to say Devin Booker was made in some sort of lab somewhere, just tailor made for the playoffs. Such a great scorer, can get to whatever spot he wants, he can play make, he's not a bad defender. There are very few weaknesses in his game, and he showed that in game one against the Clippers as he dropped a 40-point triple double on 62% true shooting percentage. And a quick little fun fact on top of that, there actually were no Sun players who shot under 50% from the field, except for Etuan Moore and Dario Saric, as they both missed the only shot that they took. So overall, Suns just came out blazing on their home court. They defended it. Clippers gave a pretty good response and kept it close for a majority of the game, but in the end, it was the Suns who prevailed. And they did all this without their veteran leader, Chris Paul, and I hope that, if not after this game, after these next couple of games with Paul still in the COVID protocol management thing, whatever that is, that I hope we can end this talk about CP3 being the best player on the Suns, because he's just not at this point. Even on the broadcast, they kept on talking about it, and I just don't understand how you can watch Devin Booker lead his team to a victory with a 40-point triple-double and not call him the best player on his team. Like, it's no disrespect to Chris Paul, he's just past his prime. Devin Booker is entering his prime. It should be a pretty simple statement. But also, shout out to Cameron Payne as the campaign continues. He was one assist off a double-double and another great spot start for the injured Chris Paul. And I just keep on loving what I'm seeing from him. Brings just such a good energy off the bench and has been great in the playoffs. And to think that he was, at one point in his career just a few years ago, written off as a non-NBA talent is just, it's a great inspiration. I hope to see him continuing to be great for the Phoenix Suns. And at this point, it just really feels impossible to hate any aspect of this Phoenix team. They are quickly becoming America's team as they are just taking down all of the greats that we have seen dominate this league for years in the past, and it's just hard to hate any single player on this team. And then slowly transitioning to the Clippers side of things, I was very interested heading into the game how the Clippers small ball would fare, as we saw them beat both the Clippers and the Jazz with it pretty handedly. I don't want to say handedly, but once they brought in the small ball lineup was effective. Maybe not some of the other lineups, but that's besides the point. Small ball lineup, I was interested to see how it would do against DeAndre Ayton after carving up Rudy Gobert with it, and it was interesting to see that DeAndre Ayton handled it fine and forced them to actually play some centers. Simply put, Rudy Gobert is a much better defensive player than offensive player, whereas DeAndre Ayton is a bit more balanced in the two aspects. And just also, simply put, Ayton just actually has a bag of moves in the post he can go to punish the smaller defenders that were being put on him at the start of the game. Just literally just low post hook shots and drop steps. Very basic stuff, but DeAndre Ayton actually is good at those things, unlike Rudy Gobert. And overall, all this means is that we're going to be seeing a lot more of Ivica Zubac and Boogie Cousins throughout the series. Boogie Cousins had a nice little scoring stretch, but also gave up a ton of points on the defensive side of the ball. I thought Zubac had a pretty good game, despite the loss. He did show some good minutes. But once again, we are seeing DeAndre Ayton be that sort of X-factor player for the Phoenix Suns yet again in another series. And he's really showing his worth so far in these playoffs. And then another pretty key factor into why the small ball approach didn't quite work in game one for the Clippers was also that Marcus Morris left the game with an injury and just didn't quite look the right way when he came back. And again, another really simple, low-hanging fruit, but if both Marcus Morris and Kawhi Leonard are to be banged up for the rest of the series, I just really don't see a way for the Clippers to win this. I mean, maybe if they could stretch it out to 6 or 7 games and steal a few early, they might have a chance, but it's just really hard to win in the NBA playoffs when 2 of your top 3 scoring creators are either hurt or out with injuries. We just saw this happen with the Brooklyn Nets against the Milwaukee Bucks, and it'll be no different for the Clippers. With that being said, though, Paul George did do a pretty good job at keeping this game close. It did only end up being a 6-point win in the end for the Suns, and you have to also add in the fact that the Suns are red hot shooting for pretty much the entire game. PG turned into a dumpster fire in the fourth quarter. Plus, the Suns did have home court advantage in this one, and I don't know. I feel like there might be a path to the Clippers maybe stealing a game or two early and being able to prolong the series to the point where maybe they could get Morris and Kawhi healthy, or at least one of them back healthy. But I don't know. I don't really believe in this Clippers team to do much damage in the series, and I won't at all be surprised if it only goes 4 or 5 games. But whether the series goes 4, 5, 6, or 7, whatever happens, Paul George definitely deserves his flowers for what he's been doing so far in this postseason. He has truly elevated his game. He's averaging 26, 9, and 5 on 59% true shooting, and not to mention, but after Kawhi went down in the second round, Paul George led 2 big wins over the Utah Jazz, the 1-seeded Utah Jazz, to send the Clippers to their first ever Western Conference Finals appearance. So again, Paul George deserves his flowers. I think he's finally shedding himself of the way off P nickname. At least he is in my eyes, and I hope he is in the eyes of a lot of you guys as well, because he has deserved it for the great entire season. He even had a great regular season that then led into the playoffs. A little bit of a slow start once he did get to the postseason, but again, PG deserves his flowers. Now, with all of that stuff out of the way, I wanted to break down Devin Booker's big third quarter that he had, in which he scored 18 points, had a few assists, and I think this is really the turning point in this game that opened the doors for this Phoenix win. And so let's just hop into some film breakdown of what Devin Booker did so well. Coming out of the half, the Clippers definitely made a point of sending doubles at Devin Booker every time an action was ran for him or he just touched the ball in general. And as you can see from these clips here, to start the second half, Devin Booker just had some pretty easy assists, either off straight double team or he had a hockey assist. So after those assists to get started in the quarter, we see Devin Booker here. The Clippers actually came out in a zone for a few possessions. Not really too sure why, but as you can see on this play here, Campaign swings it over to Booker. PG and Terrence Mann do a pretty terrible job at keeping him outside the paint, and D-Book easily finds a seam in the zone, gets to the foul line, and hits the easy jumper. And then the next possession down, once again, Campaign swings it to Devin Booker. Booker again attacks the zone, but then dumps it off to DeAndre Ayton rolling in the paint for the very easy dunk. And then with around 3:30 left in the quarter, the Clippers at this point were actually up 6, which was their biggest lead of the night. They had a ton of momentum in their direction as they're hitting just some big time shots. But Devin Booker, again, showing why he is officially the best player on the Suns from here on out. Again, no disrespect to Chris Paul, but Devin Booker comes out, scores 12 straight points over the next 2.5 minutes, gets the crowd back on their feet and into the game, and this was just a really big time segment of plays from Devin Booker. And another little fun fact just to throw in here, Booker actually scored or assisted on 26 of Phoenix's 36 total points in the third quarter. So again, big time, big player in the team stuff. And the big run starts here as Terrence Mann ices the screen, forces Devin Booker to reject it with a nice behind the back move. He then puts Mann in jail as he dribbles to the foul line, gets to his spot, and then hits the tough jumper. Next, we see Reggie Jackson make a pretty bad turnover, and then he tries to get that cheeky little Euro foul in transition. Refs don't call it, thankfully, and it leads to a wide open Devin Booker 3 as punishment for Reggie Jackson just making bad play after bad play. Next, we see a failed Spain pick and roll attempt, and then the ball gets swung out to Devin Booker, who then catches and drives right to his spot at the foul line on Terrence Mann, all over him, gets the and one jumper. And I loved this next play here because I am a big sucker for high ball screens like this that DeAndre Ayton sets for Devin Booker. It just allows him to get so much more space and a full head of steam against Ivica Zubac, who was in drop here. And Devin Booker just attacks him easily, gets to the foul line. Pat Bev is lost after the screen, and it's just an easy bucket for Devin Booker. And they go right back to it on the next possession, as it's another high ball screen. Again, Zubac can drop. Pat Bev does a better job at sticking with Devin Booker on this play, but by this point, Booker already has 10 straight points, and it is just easy for him at this point to hit the jumper again, even with Pat Bev with a solid contest. And then the third quarter scoring for the Suns is capped off as on this pick and roll, it is a hard double on Devin Booker, gets it out quick, and then gets the hockey assist as Ayton finds Torrey Craig for the 3 in the corner. Like I said, this little scoring run by Devin Booker was so essential at getting the crowd back on their feet into the game, get the energy back into the arena, and it showed as in the start of the fourth quarter, the Suns went on a quick 10-0 run, and then they never looked back. I think the closest that the Clippers got to them was either 4 or 6 points, But again, game was pretty much on ice for the rest of the fourth quarter. Suns get out of there with a big victory in game one as they take the series lead over the LA Clippers. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't look back from here. All season long, the Suns have been a very deserving team of all the winning that they've accomplished. And honestly, I feel like they haven't even gotten enough credit for the job they've done, starting back to the bubble last season, where obviously they went 8-0. They didn't even end up making the playoffs, but then they come back, they get Chris Paul in a trade, and they just take off after a couple of free agent signings as well. And again, it's just been a great season from everyone involved. Monty Williams probably deserved head coach of the year, or at least more votes in that aspect. James Jones, it was just announced that he won executive of the year, and for great reason as well. Overall, I'm just very excited to see what this team is able to do for both the rest of these playoffs and for the next couple of years down the line as well. I even think that they've done enough so far to prove that even if all the teams in the West were healthy, there's probably still a pretty good chance that the Suns are the ones that come out on top and reach the NBA Finals. Obviously, a LeBron and AD Lakers team, if they had been healthy in round one, that would have been a very, very good matchup rather than the sort of anticlimactic 6 games that we originally got. But in the end, I still think the Suns team is probably one of the best teams in the league. They've shown it all year. They deserve their flowers as well. And again, I'm really excited to see what they do from here.